If you're like most people, you probably don't spend much time thinking about lamp finials, but I do. I'm Dave Savage, and welcome to Pick and A Studios, my shop for fine wooden turnings. Lamp finials are special turnings. That's the part at the top of the lamp that holds the shade on. I make over 100 different patterns, and this is the story about how they're made. I'll be making one of our smooth crescent finials in black walnut. It's a nice contemporary shape, about 3 inches tall. I start by cutting the wood into blanks for turning. First they're squared, then they're cut to length. Most of the finials have the wood grain oriented lengthwise or vertically, but some orient horizontally, which highlights the grains and colors differently when they're finished. This finial has a vertical grain. For the finials, I generally work with 5 different woods: black walnut, curly maple, mahogany, teak, and cherry, but almost any type of wood can be used. Also, I usually cut the blanks in batches, but for this video I'll work with a single blank so it's easier to follow the process. Once the blanks are cut, the ends get sanded so they're perpendicular to the sides, then center is marked on one end for drilling. Here the blank is being drilled for the brass sleeve, and the hole is slightly smaller than the sleeve, so it's a tight fit. Next, the blanks get a threaded brass sleeve glued into one end. The sleeve gets set into the blank so it's nearly flush with the end surface. The excess glue is removed and it's set aside for the glue to dry. It's quick to set up the blanks with the brass sleeves. Depending on the type of wood and the glue that's used, they're usually ready to turn in 1 to 2 days. The brass sleeve is important for several reasons. First, it fits one of our special tools, a spindle adapter for the lathe, which is the part that holds the blank on the lathe. They're also the correct size for attaching a finial to a lamp with a center post instead of a harp, like a Tiffany-style design. Most lamps have a harp that the shade rests on. At the top of the harp is a post that the finial screws onto. I use a special adapter that fits a standard-sized post and screws into the brass sleeve in the bottom of the finial. It also centers the lampshade on the harp. Once the glue for the brass sleeve is dried, the end of the blank is sanded again to bring the brass flush with the end of the blank. This end of the blank will be the bottom of the finial. The threads of the brass sleeve are cleaned out with a hand tap to remove any excess glue in the threads. This allows the blank to seat flat against the spindle adapter on the lathe. And now it's time to turn. I start the turning by rounding the blank between centers to the outside diameter, and for this finial that's 1 5/32. Then it's cut to length, which is 3 inches. The inside center depth gets cut, and the bottom edge gets a small bevel cut. While the finial's being shaped, I should mention a couple of things. Pick and A has a total of 12 different product groups, including custom works and a growing number of special tools and supplies for makers, like you see in this video. You can see those at my gallery, pickandastudios.com, and the address is below. Several of those products will be featured in upcoming videos, so as the expression goes, stay tuned. And if you want to contact me, the easiest way is through the contact page on the gallery. Thanks for watching, and if you're still with me, I hope you enjoy the rest of this story. It should be interesting. And now, back to the finial. Here you can see the end has been cut, the center diameter is set, and the bevel has been cut on the bottom edge. With those done, the center portion of the finial gets hollowed to an inward arc between the top and bottom edges. You can see that being done here. Once that's completed, the finial will get sanded smooth. The shape of this finial can be a little deceptive because it flows so smoothly, but if you look closely, you'll see it's actually made up of 2 reverse curves, the inward curve of the main body and the outward curve of the face. Part of what makes this shape so fluid and balanced are the proportions, and believe it or not, it took a lot of trial and error to get those right, but in the end, it was worth it. It's important to keep those proportions consistent, and here you can see the length and slope of the face being marked. At this point in the turning, it would be quite difficult to cut the face on the lathe unless it was somehow carved. So it will be cut on the bandsaw, then fine-tuned by hand, and those markings act as a guide. Now the end is cut off the finial so the face can be cut on the bandsaw, but it's hard to hold and it's subject to roll during the cut, so it could become spirited quickly. I also need most of my fingers to continue my work, so to avoid these little issues, it gets attached to a long holding rod for the face cut, and the cut is done rather slowly. The cut from the bandsaw is quite rough, so first a disc sander and then a belt sander are used to help smooth the face of the finial, and you can see it's starting to take shape. Lastly, the finials return to the lathe for final shaping and sanding. When it's done, it goes into a holding fixture for finishing. The finials get a hand-rubbed finish. They're sanded to 600 grit on the lathe, then 2 coats of teak oil, and between coats they're rubbed out to 1500 grit. I've found 2 simple tricks to a beautiful teak oil finish. Make sure each finish coat is super dry and don't apply the finish so heavy it becomes gummy. Once the finish dries, the finials are rubbed out one last time with a 3000 grit pad, then waxed and polished, and I warm the wax by friction and rub it into the wood. The wax gives the wood a little added protection and a beautiful sheen. The finish is silky smooth with a warm matte glow. Lastly, the brass adapter is installed and our smooth crescent finial is finished and ready for a lamp. Well, that's all for this story. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join me in upcoming videos featuring Piccaninny's fine products.